Lieutenant James Jace Harper took a deep breath as he stepped off the ramp of the Earth Alliance shuttle. The air of Voltura 7 was thicker, slightly sweet, with a hint of spice that tingled his senses. The sky glowed faintly green, with 3 smaller moons clustered together in the distance. This was definitely nothing like Earth. Jace was here as an ambassador, part of a new exchange program with the Thelkari, a species known for their unique biology and peaceful nature. The Earth Alliance hoped this connection could build alliances, trade, and a better understanding of the galaxy's mysteries. But to Jace, this was all still just a little surreal. After all, not every guy back home could say they'd met actual aliens, let alone worked with them. As he glanced around, he saw her, the Thelkari representative assigned as his guide. Her name was Makari, and she was unlike any alien Jace had imagined. Tall and graceful, Makari had an almost humanoid body, with deep sea-green skin and luminous, golden eyes that studied him with intense curiosity. But what caught his attention were the slender tentacles flowing from her back, moving slowly and almost thoughtfully, as if they had a mind of their own. "Welcome, Lieutenant Harper," Makari spoke, her voice smooth, but carrying an accent Jace couldn't quite place. She extended one of her tentacles, which he realized with some hesitation was meant for a handshake. "Ah, thanks," Jace replied, reaching out to grip the tentacle. It felt warm and surprisingly firm, pulsing gently under his hand. Her touch was unlike anything he'd felt before. Her tentacle released his hand after a brief shake, retracting gracefully behind her. "You may call me Jace," he said, offering a slight grin. "Lieutenant sounds too formal." "Jace," she repeated, her voice soft, as if testing the name. Her tentacles shifted slightly, almost mirroring her curiosity. "I am Makari. I have been selected to guide you and assist you in understanding our ways." "Right," Jace replied, nodding. "I'm here to learn about the Thelkari. Earth is eager to understand your people. It's an honor." Her golden eyes sparkled with something like amusement, and Jace felt himself flush. There was an undeniable presence about Makari, something elegant and slightly intimidating. He realized this would be more than just a diplomatic trip. He'd have to figure out how to navigate not just alien customs, but also the complex and captivating Thelkari guide assigned to him. As they walked together, Makari led him through a lush bioluminescent forest that was both breathtaking and a bit eerie. Strange plants twisted around each other, glowing in shades of purple and blue. Small, soft lights floated in the air like fireflies, lighting their path. "Your world is incredible," Jace said, his voice filled with awe as he looked around. "Thank you," Makari replied, glancing at him with a smile. "The Thelkari have spent centuries learning to live in harmony with our surroundings." They reached a clearing, and Makari stopped, turning to face him. "I must share something important, Jace. Our people communicate not only with words, but also through gestures. Physical gestures that may seem unusual to humans. We use our tentacles for expression as much as for action." Jace shifted a bit, nodding, unsure of what that exactly meant. "All right, I'll try to keep that in mind." "Good," she said with a smile, her tentacles flowing with a new energy. "For example, this gesture." She reached out with a tentacle and gently wrapped it around his wrist, her eyes fixed on his. The sensation was warm and unexpectedly soothing, her tentacle pulsing slightly with her heartbeat. Jace's heart sped up a little. "This is a greeting?" "Yes," she replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. "It symbolizes connection and respect." Jace tried to calm his racing heart, nodding seriously. "I respect you too," he said, though his voice betrayed his nerves. The moment stretched out, each of them studying the other. There was an intensity in her gaze that he hadn't expected, something almost curious. Her tentacle loosened, and she withdrew it slowly, a soft, unreadable expression on her face. "Welcome to Voltura 7, Jace," she said with a slight nod. I look forward to our time together." As they continued their journey, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that this would be an adventure unlike any he had imagined. One that could change not just his career, but his entire view of the universe. And somehow, he had a feeling that Makari felt the same. The next morning, Jace woke to the soft, glowing light that filled the skies of Voltura 7. He pulled on his uniform and stepped outside, greeted by the strange but beautiful sights around him. The Thalkari village lay in a quiet valley surrounded by cliffs covered in glowing moss, and he could hear the faint musical hum of the wind passing through alien plants. Today, Makari had planned to show him around her village and introduce him to more of her people. He didn't know what to expect. His first day had been intense, filled with unfamiliar customs, and that strange yet oddly comforting greeting gesture she'd shown him. It was clear that the Thalkari had an entirely different way of interacting, one he'd have to get used to if he wanted to make a good impression. As he walked down the path, he saw Makari waiting for him at the edge of the village, her tentacles moving with a calm rhythm. As she watched him approach, she smiled, her golden eyes lighting up. "Good morning, Jace," she greeted. "I trust you slept well." "Yes, I did, thank you," he replied, returning her smile. Jace had been on Voltura 7 for nearly a week now, and each day with Makari felt like a new adventure. With every passing moment, he found himself more captivated by her. She was his guide, yes, but somehow more than that. And he sensed that she felt the same strange connection. One afternoon, they were hiking up a narrow trail that led to a high cliff overlooking the Thalkari forests. Makari had invited him on this journey to show him one of her people's sacred spots, a place with a powerful view of their world. The climb was tough, but Jace pushed through, determined to show her he could handle it. "Almost there, Jace," Makari said, her voice encouraging. She moved gracefully up the steep trail, her tentacles helping her balance on uneven rocks. Jace, on the other hand, struggled to keep up. The ground here was slippery, with patches of moss that made every step risky. Just as he was about to step onto a loose rock, he felt a sudden firm grip around his waist. One of Makari's tentacles wrapped around him, steadying him before he could slip. "Careful," she warned, pulling him back to a solid spot on the trail. Her tentacle held him close, a warm and secure pressure around his middle. "Thanks," Jace muttered, feeling his face heat up. "Guess I'm not as graceful as you." Makari smiled, her eyes reflecting gentle amusement. "Don't worry. This place takes time to get used to." She didn't release him right away, her tentacle lingering around his waist, as if testing his reaction. He felt his heart race slightly, wondering if she noticed. Finally, she let go, and they continued up the trail, reaching the top just as the sun began to dip below the horizon. The view was breathtaking. The entire forest stretched out beneath them, glowing with a soft, natural light that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the planet. "Wow," Jace said softly. "It's beautiful, Makari." She nodded, looking over at him with a thoughtful expression. "The Thalkari believe that this place connects us to the energy of our world. We come here to meditate, to reflect. Some say it strengthens our bonds." Jace glanced at her, feeling a strange warmth in her words. "Bonds?" "Yes," she replied, her golden eyes meeting his. "With each other, with the world around us. This place helps us feel closer." As they stood there, watching the sunset, the silence between them felt comfortable, almost intimate. Jace felt a strange urge to reach out, but he didn't know if that was acceptable in Thalkari culture. Would she find it strange, even offensive? Before he could decide, Makari extended a tentacle, wrapping it gently around his wrist in that familiar Thalkari gesture of connection. He glanced at her, surprised but not uncomfortable. In fact, he felt oddly comforted, as if her touch grounded him in this strange world. "Jace," she began softly, "you're different from anyone I've met. Your strength and curiosity, they're rare." Jace swallowed, unsure of how to respond. "Thanks, Makari." I feel the same way about you." Her eyes softened, and he thought he saw a hint of something more in her expression. "You don't find my tentacles strange." "Strange? Maybe at first," he admitted, smiling. "But now, I think they're amazing. They're a part of you, and I wouldn't change anything about that." Mekari's tentacle squeezed his wrist gently, sending a warm pulse through him. Jace felt his heartbeat quicken. There was something so genuine in her gaze, something that made him feel like he truly belonged here, even if he was the outsider. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the quiet moment. They both turned to see a creature approaching, a large, six-legged animal with sharp fangs and a thick hide. Mekari tensed, her tentacles lifting in a defensive posture. "Stay close," she whispered, moving in front of him protectively. The creature hissed, inching closer, its eyes locked on them. Jace reached for his communicator, but Mekari stopped him. "No need. I can handle this." With a swift motion, she extended two of her tentacles, waving them in a pattern he didn't recognize. The creature paused, its aggressive posture relaxing as it backed away, retreating into the forest. Once the danger was gone, Mekari looked at him with a small smile. "There's more to my tentacles than just greetings." Jace laughed, feeling a mix of relief and awe. "Clearly, you just saved us with them." As they made their way back down the trail, he found himself watching her with even more admiration. Her tentacles weren't just a part of her. They were part of what made her incredible. And he knew, deep down, that his curiosity about her was growing into something far more than friendship. The following day, Jace prepared himself for a formal Thalkari ceremony. Mekari had explained that this event was essential, a ritual meant to strengthen their alliance. Although Jace had participated in many diplomatic events before, this one felt different. There was a strong cultural aspect to the ceremony, something that went beyond formalities. Mekari met him at the ceremonial grounds, a large open space surrounded by bioluminescent pillars and filled with rows of Thalkari people. Their glowing eyes watched him closely, making him feel like he was under a spotlight. But when he looked at Mekari, he felt reassured. Her presence made the unfamiliar surroundings feel almost welcoming. "Are you ready, Jace?" she asked softly, her golden eyes reflecting the gentle glow of the pillars. Jace nodded, although he couldn't hide his nervousness. "As ready as I'll ever be." Mekari placed a tentacle on his shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. "You'll do fine. Just follow my lead." The ceremony began with a series of rhythmic chants, and Mekari explained that this was part of a Thalkari ritual called the Trust Ritual, symbolizing openness between two species. She explained that this ritual required physical closeness, a symbolic gesture of unity and respect. Jace wasn't entirely sure what closeness would mean in Thalkari terms, but he tried to stay calm. He wanted to honor their traditions, even if it meant stepping outside his comfort zone. The ritual began with Mekari standing beside him, facing her people, and then turning toward him with a serious expression. She extended two of her tentacles, wrapping them gently but firmly around his arms. The sensation was warm and soft, her tentacles pulsing slightly as if echoing her heartbeat. "Jace," she said softly, "to complete this ritual, we must share a moment of trust. You must allow me to wrap you fully in my embrace. It is our way of bonding." Jace's heart raced at the thought, but he managed a small nod. "I trust you, Mekari." Her golden eyes softened at his words. Slowly, she extended more of her tentacles, wrapping them around his shoulders, chest, and back. Jace felt surrounded, enveloped in a cocoon of warmth and security. It was a strange feeling, vulnerable yet comforting, as if her presence shielded him from everything else. To his surprise, he didn't feel as awkward as he'd expected. Instead, he felt connected. Mekari's tentacles held him gently, and the Thalkari in the crowd seemed to approve, nodding in silent acknowledgement. He realized that this act, though unusual, was deeply meaningful for them. It was a declaration of trust and respect. But then something unexpected happened. As Makari's tentacles pulsed with energy, he noticed her cheeks tinting a soft shade of blue, a color he hadn't seen on her before. "Are you okay?" he asked, sensing her hesitation. Makari's eyes widened slightly, as if caught off guard. "Yes, Jace. It's just, this gesture is not only ceremonial. It also has personal significance in our culture." "What do you mean?" he asked, genuinely curious. "In Thalkari tradition," she explained, her voice low, "only those who are bonded, who share a special connection, would usually experience such a moment. Our tentacles, they respond to feelings. This pulse, this color, it's a response to our bond." Jace's eyes widened as he processed her words. He hadn't realized just how close this ritual would bring them. Makari's tentacles pulsed again, this time more warmly, and he couldn't ignore the way her gaze softened as she looked at him. "Makari," he whispered, "I didn't know." She offered a gentle smile, her tentacles loosening slightly around him. "Neither did I. But perhaps that is the nature of bonds. They surprise us, bring us closer when we least expect it." The Thalkari crowd began to chant softly again, signaling the end of the ritual. Makari released him slowly, her tentacles leaving his arms and shoulders one by one. The warmth faded, but the memory lingered. For a moment, he felt a strange emptiness without her touch. When the ritual was over, the Thalkari gathered around to welcome him as one of their own. They placed glowing flowers around his neck, a final symbol of unity. Jace couldn't help but glance at Makari, who stood beside him, her eyes holding a depth he hadn't seen before. As they walked back toward the village, Jace felt a strange mix of emotions. Makari had become more than a guide, more than a friend. There was a bond between them now, a feeling that went beyond words or customs. "I'm honored to be part of your world, Makari," he said softly as they reached the edge of the village. "And I'm honored to share it with you, Jace," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. They walked in silence, but it was a silence filled with understanding. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, bound by a connection that crossed galaxies and bridged worlds. In the days following the ceremony, Jace felt a shift in his relationship with Makari. Their bond, which had been growing since he arrived on Voltura 7, now seemed undeniable. They spent more time together, exploring the Thalkari world, learning from each other, and discovering new things about each other's cultures. Jace found himself looking forward to every moment with her. One afternoon, as they walked through the forest, Makari suddenly paused, her tentacles extending outward as if sensing something nearby. "Jace, stop," she whispered, holding out a tentacle to keep him back. Her expression was serious, her eyes scanning the trees. "What is it?" he asked, lowering his voice. "There's something here. I feel something strange." Her tentacles seemed to hum with tension, her senses heightened. Jace looked around, trying to spot whatever had alerted her. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Normally, they could hear the faint hum of wildlife, the sound of distant Thalkari voices, but now there was only silence. Then suddenly, a loud crashing sound came from the trees ahead of them. Makari tensed, her tentacles lifting in a defensive stance. From the shadows emerged a large metallic creature, a kind of automated probe that Jace instantly recognized. It was from Earth's rival faction, a dangerous group with little respect for other species. "Oh no, it's a Dominion drone," Jace muttered, his heart racing. He'd heard of these drones before. They were designed to collect data, but if threatened, they could become aggressive. The drone's sensors scanned the area, its red eye focusing on Makari. She stood firm, but Jace could see the tension in her stance. "Stay behind me, Makari," Jace said, stepping forward. He knew that to the Dominion, Makari was nothing more than a specimen to be studied or captured. "Jace, be careful," Makari warned, her tentacles extending protectively around him. The drone emitted a loud mechanical sound, a warning to back off. But Jace wasn't about to let it harm Mikari or anyone else in the village. He took a step forward, raising his communicator to try and send a signal to disable it. But the drone moved fast, releasing a burst of energy that sent him stumbling backward. "Jace!" Mikari cried out, rushing to his side. One of her tentacles wrapped around his arm, steadying him as he tried to stand. "I'm fine," he said, his voice grim. "But that thing's not going to leave us alone." The drone hovered closer, its sensors glowing brighter. Just as it prepared to attack again, Mikari raised her tentacles, creating a powerful barrier of energy between them and the machine. Her tentacles pulsed with a bright, glowing light, a force that seemed to come from deep within her. Jace stared, amazed. "Mikari, what are you doing?" "I'm protecting us," she replied, her voice steady. "I won't let it harm you." With a swift motion, Mikari's tentacles shot forward, wrapping around the drone's metallic shell. She squeezed, her strength surprising even Jace as he watched her tentacles crack the drone's outer casing. The machine struggled, emitting sparks, but Mikari held firm, her determination unwavering. Finally, with one final burst of energy, she ripped the drone apart, the pieces falling to the ground in a heap of metal and wires. Breathing heavily, Mikari released her hold, her tentacles retracting as the forest returned to silence. Jace stared at her, speechless. "Mikari, that was incredible." She looked at him, her golden eyes softened with relief. "I couldn't let anything happen to you, Jace. You're important to me." He felt his heart beat faster at her words, realizing just how much she meant to him too. He stepped closer, his hand resting on her shoulder. "Mikari, you're important to me too, more than I can even explain." She reached out, one of her tentacles wrapping around his hand in a gentle gesture. They stood there, surrounded by the stillness of the forest, and for a moment, it felt like the world had faded away, leaving only the two of them. "Perhaps," Mikari said softly, her voice almost a whisper, "we are more alike than we realized." Jace nodded, feeling a deep warmth in her words. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing. He was willing to face any challenge with her by his side. As they walked back to the village, side by side, he could feel the strength of their connection, stronger now than ever. Whatever dangers they faced, he knew they would face them together, united by a bond that had grown beyond words, beyond worlds. Back at the village, Jace and Mikari were welcomed with open arms after news of the destroyed drone spread. But the relief was short-lived. The Dominion faction wouldn't ignore a missing drone for long, and Jace knew they'd send reinforcements once they detected the loss. As he walked through the village with Mikari, he felt the weight of that knowledge growing heavier. The Thalkari elders, wise and observant, had already gathered in the central meeting hall when they arrived. Mikari gave Jace a reassuring nod, and they entered together. The elders looked at them with a mix of gratitude and concern. Jace, one of the elders named Zorath, spoke, his voice deep and steady. "You have shown great courage, but destroying that machine will bring consequences. Your Dominion will not ignore this." "I know," Jace replied, feeling the pressure of the situation. "The Dominion is relentless, and they see every species they encounter as a resource to control. They won't stop until they know what happened to their drone. And if they find out about your village, they'll try to take over." A murmur of concern went through the room, and Jace could see the fear in their eyes. But Mikari stepped forward, her tentacles moving gracefully as she addressed the group. "We won't let them take us," she said firmly. "The Thalkari have always defended our home, and now, with Jace's help, we have a chance to fight back." Jace nodded, his resolve hardening. "I have some knowledge of their technology. If I can modify your defenses, we might be able to stop the Dominion ships before they reach the surface." The elders exchanged looks, and after a moment, Zorath nodded. "Then we trust you, Jace. Our survival may depend on it." Over the next few days, Jace worked tirelessly with the Thalkari, modifying their technology and setting up a network of early warning systems around the village. Makari was by his side, guiding him and providing support. Her tentacles proved to be as skilled with delicate technology as they were with powerful defenses, and together they built a plan that felt as strong as their bond. One evening, as they took a break from their work, Jace and Makari sat on a small hill overlooking the village. The stars above them sparkled in the clear sky, casting a peaceful glow over the landscape. "Thank you, Jace," Makari said quietly, her golden eyes shining in the starlight. "You've given us a chance to defend ourselves." He shook his head. "I should be the one thanking you. You showed me what it means to truly care for someone, to stand together no matter what. I've never felt this connected to anyone before." Her tentacles reached out, wrapping around his hand in a gesture of warmth and affection. "Nor have I. I never thought an outsider could understand us so well, or care as much as you do." They sat in silence for a moment, simply enjoying the closeness between them. But their quiet moment was interrupted by a distant rumble, a low sound that seemed to shake the ground beneath them. Jace looked up, his heart sinking. In the sky, faint but growing brighter, were the unmistakable lights of approaching ships. "They're here," he said, his voice filled with tension. Makari's expression turned serious. "Then we must be ready." Rushing back to the village, Jace and Makari alerted everyone to prepare for the invasion. The defense systems they'd set up buzzed to life, creating a protective shield around the village, powered by Thalkari energy and the modifications Jace had implemented. As the Dominion ships drew closer, they began firing, testing the strength of the village's defenses. The shields held, but each hit drained more power. Jace knew they wouldn't last forever. "They're trying to find a weakness," he muttered, adjusting the settings on one of the main consoles. "We need to make our stand now." Makari nodded, her tentacles rippling with a fierce determination. "I will fight beside you, Jace. We are stronger together." The first wave of Dominion drones began descending from the ships, their mechanical forms cutting through the air as they prepared to breach the shields. But Makari and the Thalkari warriors were ready. With a swift motion, Makari's tentacles shot forward, striking the drones with precision. Her energy pulsed through her tentacles, knocking the machines back as sparks flew. Jace joined the fight, using his knowledge of Dominion tech to disable the drones with well-placed shots and quick adjustments to the village's defenses. The Thalkari fought bravely beside him, their movements a powerful display of unity. As the battle raged on, Jace and Makari found themselves back to back, fending off the relentless wave of drones. They were exhausted but driven by the bond they shared, a connection that made them stronger than either had ever imagined. Finally, as dawn broke over the horizon, the last of the Dominion drones fell, a smoking heap of metal. The remaining ships retreated, their attack thwarted. The village erupted in cheers, the Thalkari celebrating their hard-won victory. Jace looked at Makari, both of them breathing heavily, their faces filled with relief and joy. "We did it," he said, a smile spreading across his face. Makari wrapped a tentacle around his shoulder, pulling him close. "Yes, Jace. Together, we did." And in that moment, surrounded by their allies and the rising sun, Jace knew that he had found a home and a family among the stars. With the Dominion defeated and the village safe, the Thalkari gathered in the center of their village to celebrate. The Thalkari cheered and sang songs of victory, their glowing forms dancing around the village fires, creating a warm and joyous atmosphere. Jace and Makari stood at the edge of the celebration, watching the Thalkari enjoy their newfound peace. Makari's tentacles gently curled around his arm in a familiar, comforting gesture. She turned to him, her golden eyes shining with happiness. "Jace, you've done so much for us," she said softly. "We may not have survived without you." He shook his head, smiling. "Makari, I wouldn't have been able to do any of this without you and your people. You welcomed me, trusted me, and because of that, I feel like I finally have a place where I belong." They stood together, quietly enjoying the warmth of each other's presence. The hardships they had faced, the battles, the close calls, the growing bond between them. All of it felt like a journey they had taken together, one that changed them both. As the celebration continued, Zorith, the elder who had welcomed Jace, approached them. His wise eyes sparkled as he looked between them. "Jace, we owe you our thanks," he said, his voice warm. "You've become one of us, and the Thalkari will always consider you family. If you choose to stay with us, this will be your home." Jace felt a lump in his throat at the elder's words. For so long, he'd been a wanderer, moving from one assignment to the next, never feeling like he truly belonged anywhere. But here, among the Thalkari and by Makari's side, he'd found more than just allies. He'd found a family. Makari looked at him, her gaze full of warmth and hope. "Jace, you could stay with us. Together, we could explore new possibilities, build a future, and learn more about each other's worlds." He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. Staying on Voltura 7 would mean leaving behind everything he once knew. Earth, his former life, the uncertainty of what lay ahead. But as he looked into Makari's eyes, he realized he'd already made his choice. "Makari," he said, his voice steady and full of emotion, "I would be honored to stay here, with you and the Thalkari. I don't want to be anywhere else." A smile spread across her face, and her tentacles tightened gently around his arm, a gesture he now recognized as a symbol of affection. The two of them shared a silent understanding, their connection deeper than words. The following weeks were filled with rebuilding and planning. Jace and Makari worked together to strengthen the village's defenses and set up new technology that could help them detect any future threats. But they also found time to explore the world around them, discovering new landscapes, hidden caves, and mysterious wildlife that had long been forgotten by the Thalkari. One evening, as the sun set over the distant mountains, Jace and Makari found themselves on a quiet hill overlooking the village. They sat side by side, watching the sky turn shades of orange and purple. Makari reached out, wrapping her tentacles around his hand as they watched the stars begin to appear. "Jace," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I never thought I would feel this way about someone. You've shown me that connections can exist beyond species, beyond worlds." He turned to her, his heart full. "And you've shown me what it means to truly belong, to fight for something worth protecting. I'm grateful to have found you, Makari." In the quiet moments that followed, they sat together, their hands intertwined. The galaxy stretched before them, vast and full of possibilities. Yet here, in this small corner of the universe, they had found something truly rare, a love that bridged worlds. Over time, Jace became a part of the Thalkari village, teaching them what he knew and learning from them in return. With Makari by his side, he felt like he was finally where he was meant to be. Together, they became a symbol of unity, a living testament to the power of trust, respect, and love between different species. As the seasons changed and time passed, the stories of Jace and Makari's bond spread across Voltura 7, inspiring other Thalkari villages to welcome outsiders with open minds and open hearts. In the end, Jace and Makari had built a life they never could have imagined, a life of shared dreams, endless discovery, and a bond that only grew stronger with time. And every night, as they looked up at the stars together, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, forever bound by a connection that reached across the stars.